Melvin Morey, what a wonderful example of how God can use a life. Because he lived his life with a servant's heart, today we're here to celebrate a life that counts. Dad was born April 20th, 1932 in Mohawk, Michigan. That's an intersection of a couple of Keweenaw County roads in the far reaches of the Upper Peninsula. Born a third-generation Finnish immigrant, my dad protected his heritage well. Part of that heritage was understanding the struggles of the early settlers and the hardships they went through and how it led to some of the comforts that we exist to know today. My dad knew some of those hardships himself. As a young farmer boy, those of you that farmers in the room understand that waking up at 5 a.m., milking cows, shoveling manure, other chores, trying to get breakfast, change clothes, be at the bus stop by 7, go to school, and then repeat it all in the afternoon. He also was a child that was born in the Depression, so he understood what it was like to live in a poor family. And he had a couple of stories that were pretty interesting, but he used to get a little jealous of some of the other children on the playground because their families could afford Wonder Bread and bologna for lunch. And you have to understand, all my dad had was his grandmother's homemade bread and real meat. And Dad used to say, sometimes you just don't appreciate how good you really have it. Right. And I guess hardship is the best recipe for authenticity. My dad's firstborn son to Urho and Esther Rory. He revered his parents. He told stories of being out in the woods, 20 below zero. Probably overestimated that a little bit, but it's cold up there. Foot of snow, just him and his dad having to work with a saw, doing logs all day for meager wages. My dad honored his mother and father. And that goes beyond just mere obedience. That gets into understanding that God used his parents as instruments of his own life. And I guess that's what honoring your parents really means. In 1952, Dad got drafted into the Korean War. He served his country on the front lines. He talked a lot about his military experiences, but he never really talked about how it affected him. I guess that's a little bit consistent with what's known as the silent generation. He served his country over self, despite doubts and despite fear, like a lot of young men. My dad taught in the Marshall School District for over 35 years, mostly to seniors. Many fun trips to the restaurants around local town is when former students would come up to the table and introduce themselves. And usually Dad knew exactly the name behind that face, what year they graduated. And I think most of the students were really marveled that he could still remember them by name. He took pride in teaching both sides of an issue. Being that he taught government, history, some of those times around the 60s and 70s were actually quite volatile times when we were trying to figure it out. And then he would challenge a student that you have to think and come up with your own mind, make up your own mind. And I think that was his unique approach to teaching. The other way he looked at teaching was, he told his students, just do your best, because I'm going to do my best. And I think that's a unique covenant between a teacher and a student. Raising us boys in particular, and my sister, he had a handful with us and his own house. But if you lived in our neighborhood, it wasn't uncommon to see Dad walking down the road with his extension ladder going to the widows' homes. And there were a few on our block, cleaning gutters, washing windows, painting, odd jobs. And I think that that's a part of Dad that was instilled in us as well. Across the street from us was a single woman that taught for many years, Madeline Hutchins. And When we got our driver's license, us boys each took years doing her shopping every Saturday and then taking her out to eat on Saturday afternoon. I also remember most holidays and many Sundays, our family would take a plate across the street. And as I think about it, it was always the first plate. Charity didn't involve leftovers. I think that was really impactful for my dad. Nothing lit up his face quite like grandkids. We saw that in the last couple of weeks as they had a chance to visit him in the nursing home. And all of you remember playing peekaboo, hide and seek with a yip or bear crawling around the yard or the floor. I remember a story with Tyler, actually, I think. My mom and dad were babysitting him. Tyler was really short. My mom and dad got the pots and pans and wooden spoons out and decided, let's have a parade in the house. Little did they know it was dark outside, the lights are on inside, and Tyler's too small to be seen. And anyone walking by would look in the picture window and say, what wine and Lori's getting him? My dad swore a lot to us kids. We'd be driving down the road many a time. He used to swear, if you guys don't improve your behavior, I'm going to turn this car around. I doubt our behavior got better. And he never turned the car around. That makes him a liar, too. But he was an unwavering, principled man. We learned lessons about our failings. One of the most important lessons is the difference between failings and failure. I think that's what our dad instilled in us. Similar to his students, he expected us to do our best. And he had the same covenant where he promised that he would do his best as a dad. Dad made our best better. And we owe it to him to keep trying. When Dad got out of the war, he was sick for about 30 days, and my grandfather was quite ill, and they were trying to run 2 farms at the time. It was a very difficult time, and he also had his designs on the young woman. And trying to figure out amongst all that, how do I impress her? He's told the family many times his story, where that young woman centered him, convinced him to go to college and figure out a career. And he would start to say, like he has no idea how lost he would have been without her. He could never finish that story without breaking up. Theirs was a wonderful love story. They enjoyed almost everything together, and it was a real inspiration for us to see how much they adored each other. One of the hard things to see my dad there in a nursing home was how much he hated to be fussed over. And I think that's kind of common. The servant doesn't like to be served. I think maybe that's somewhat of the story, that washing the feet might be just as important as to being able to have your feet washed. One's a noble act and the other one's a vulnerable act. And when I think of my mom and my dad, they served each other, and there's some lyrics that I'm going to share with you. And I'm going to read it in a responsive way as if my mom and dad were talking to each other. But as you hear these words, think about the closest person in your life, because that's who you share that with. Maybe it's not someone you've met yet. Maybe it's someone that's sitting right next to you. Maybe it's someone that's no longer with you, you just have its memory. Or maybe it's someone you're going to go home to and experience it on a daily challenge as you go. Leah, will you let me be your servant? Let me be as Christ to you. Pray that I may have the grace to let you be my servant too. Phil, we are pilgrims on a journey. We are travelers on the road. We are here to help each other walk the mile and bear the load. Leah, I will hold the Christ light for you in the nighttime of your fears. I will hold my hand out to you. Speak the peace you long to hear. Phil, I have wept when you were weeping. When you laughed, I laughed with you. I have shared your joy and sorrow as we've seen this journey through. Leah, when we sing to God in heaven, we shall find such harmony, born of all we've known together, of Christ's love and agony. Phil, you let me be your servant. You let me be as Christ to you. I now pray that I have the grace to let you be my servant too. If Mom was the center of my dad's life, his faith was his purpose. A deeply religious man, he was consistent in his beliefs, active in his church, never wavered from learning more about the Word. He clung to his cross and was convinced of his own salvation. There's a lot in our dad's life that makes us proud. Nothing makes me more satisfied than to realize what must have occurred a couple days ago after he took his final breath. He opened up his life like a book in front of the Creator of the universe. As our all-seeing God fixed his gaze upon the pages of Dad's life, he must have praised just as we rejoice. Well done, Philip Bory. You fought the good fight. You finished the race. And you kept the faith. And now a crown of righteousness is yours. This is the essence of our celebration today, just as he would have hoped for. If there's a lesson in Dad's life, I'm pulled to one verse in the Bible. In Isaiah 6, verses 8, the prophet writes, "And the Lord cried out, whom shall I send? Who will go for us?" Notice God did not call out Isaiah by name. Surrendering our lives over to God for his useful purpose, it's not a passive process of good intentions and waiting to be called. No, it's actively removing the noise and clutter in our lives, realizing God made that call for all of us. And if we can somehow prepare our ears to hear, we too could respond, as Isaiah did, and I believe our dad did. It's the final sentence of that beautiful passage. "Here, my Lord, send me. Send me." Life that counts must toil and fight, must hate the wrong and love the right, must stand for truth by day, by night. And this is the life that counts. The life that counts must hopefully, in the midst of darkness, make melody, awaits each dawn on bended knee. This is the life that counts. The life that counts must aim to rise above the earth to sunlit skies, must fix its gaze on paradise. And this is the life that counts. Life that counts must helpfully cares and needs of others see, must seek the slaves of sin to free. And this is the life that counts. The life that counts is linked with God, turns not from the cross the rod, but walks with joy where Jesus trod. And this is the warrior's life that counts. Thanks for your attendance today. Thanks for all your love. Keep the family in our prayers.